I've been talking with you for years at this point about the completely, utterly destructive nature of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's presence in Israeli politics. This is a guy who I've been saying for years just has to go. And there are many impediments to peace in the Israeli Palestinian conflict. As many of you in the audience know, I've not been shy about naming all of them. But Benjamin Netanyahu is one of them. This is not a guy who wants peace in the sense that it doesn't benefit him politically to have serious discussions that might lead to a peace agreement. And I know there are plenty of other parties who also don't benefit from peace. But we're talking about Benjamin Netanyahu today. Netanyahu is heavily aligned with the most extreme religious elements of the Israeli political sphere. Almost everything that he does is counterproductive to the goal of a path to a long-lasting and permanent peace agreement. And he benefits from the status quo not being that and being one of threats and being on the verge of something all the time. So we heard yesterday Benjamin Netanyahu is going to make a big announcement. It is just going to be a huge, huge, huge announcement that he is going to be making, by the way, a week before the election in Israel. How exciting. And of course, I assumed it would be some horrible thing or some brazen distraction of some kind. And it was. Benjamin Netanyahu's big announcement is that if Israelis reelect him, he will take more land. He will annex pieces of the West Bank, much to the pleasure of people associated with Donald Trump's administration here in the United States. And in this particular case, Benjamin Netanyahu is talking about the Jordan Valley and the northern Dead Sea. The Trump administration, of course, was asked officially, do you support this idea? They simply said, our policy has not changed, but intimating that pretty clearly they're not going to get in the way of Benjamin Netanyahu doing this if he is indeed reelected. So this is a very brazen tactic from Netanyahu. We've seen this before. He's worried about losing. He's not polling well. It would be great for him to lose, by the way. So he has done what he always does. He has concocted this dramatic announcement riddled with red meat of different kinds, appealing to fears about terrorism and so on and so forth, which are not unfounded fears, but he appeals to them in an irrational way, which is not actually dramatic in the sense that he wanted it to be. It's just horrible. It's a horrible idea. He's done this before prior elections. It unfortunately does have an effect in the same way that here in the United States, sometimes you'll see Republicans before an election pull national security games. Oh, we've got a new recording from Osama bin Laden. Remember that? Very similar dynamic being employed in Israeli politics. So let's hope that he's voted out. Then maybe if Donald Trump is also voted out, we can make some progress towards an Israeli-Palestinian peace agreement, the parameters of which, as I see them, I've laid out many times on the program. But again, it is also more than just removing Benjamin Netanyahu, as I've talked about before. There is much more to it, including having Donald Trump, a Benjamin Netanyahu sycophant, in the White House in the United States. Now, one impediment that I've talked about many times is not the annexation specifically, but settlements. And the way that this always works with these annexations is Israel says, we need to create a defensive buffer between Palestinian territory and Israeli territory. So we need this little stretch of land here. It's just a small stretch of land. They take it, and then settlers go into those buffer zones, which moves the perimeter at which yet another buffer zone is supposedly needed, which justifies or at least creates the pretext for Benjamin Netanyahu to again say, listen, we've got to have a protective buffer in now this new line that has been drawn. The settlements have to stop. They're one of the biggest impediments to peace, big picture. And I know you all know this. A ton of stuff has to change. It is not just Israeli policy that has to change. On the Palestinian side, there is a long list of policies and people and practices and status quo that will never lead to peace. And I've been clear about it. I've not been shy about saying that. But this game that Benjamin Netanyahu is playing is completely backwards. So let's hope that the promise of this dramatic annexation of more West Bank land ends up being nothing more than a naked electioneering attempt, and that Benjamin Netanyahu will lose and thus not even have the chance to make good on this promise, because it will only lead to more of the same and more of what we've been seeing under this guy's numerous administrations over the years.